my story, I decided to start.
Good morning. We all love a good story. We all love to be able to hear somebody tell about an exciting time in their life. Sometimes we even like to share those funny things that happen in our own lives, those experiences that we had that we just have to tell other people. And we love to hear the stories. We love to gather people around, our children, our grandchildren, our friends, and say, let me tell you about the time when. And we love to tell the story. Sometimes in our story, we have segments of our story that we don't like to share. In fact, we might even skip over entire chapters of our story because we don't want to share it, because maybe we're not proud of it. Maybe we made decisions that we're not proud of, or maybe even some of us, when we do tell those segments, we even change our story a little bit, maybe modify it so it's not as bad as it could be. The reality is that the decisions that we make, not just the big decisions, but the little daily decisions that we make, affect the story that we will later tell. The decisions we made yesterday determine the story we tell today. The decisions that we make today will provide the story that we tell tomorrow. It's often referred to as the principle of the path. Choices that you make now determine where you will end up later in life. Right? If you were on a journey and you were on a hiking trail and heading down a trail and you came to a part in the trail where it could go to the right or to the left, choosing to take one path over the other will bring you to a different destination. When your GPS tells you to go right instead of left, you could be going into a completely different area than you intended to. As a pastor, people will come to me and say, Pastor Tim, I have no idea how I got where I am. And sometimes I have to reflect the hard news back that it's a reflection of the decisions that they've made. That maybe their marriage is the way it is because of decisions that they've been making. Maybe that the struggles that they're having with their children are reflections of decisions that have been made. Maybe where they are financially is a reflection of the decisions that they've been making up till this time. Decisions that we make today will determine the story that we tell tomorrow. And I believe that God wants us to have an amazing story, a great story, a God-honoring story. Last week in our message series together, we talked about the beginning of our story. When we began our story. And we talked about last week, it's kind of our theme throughout this, that we can have a story worth telling if we let God, Jesus, be the author of our story. In Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 2, it says, Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I believe that if we choose to let Christ be the author of our story, then we will have a story worth telling. I often think, like in this video, of myself later in life, and I sit down and I begin writing out my story. I want to be able to have a story that my son and my grandchildren, and if Jesus doesn't come first, my great-grandchildren and others, that it would be a great story. And I believe when Christ is the author of the story, we will have a story worth telling. So throughout this series, we're looking at several things. Last week, we talked about beginning our story, choosing to allow Christ to be the author of your story. Today, part 2 in the series is start. Choosing to start a life-altering discipline and habits that will affect your story. Next week, in part 3 in this series, we'll talk about stop. We may need to stop something in order to have a story worth telling. And in our 4th week together, we'll talk about stay. Maybe God is calling you to stay where you are. Maybe you want to bail. Maybe you want to leave. Maybe you want to go. But God is saying, no, I want you to stay. And then in the last week together, we'll be talking about going. Maybe God is calling you to go. And as the author of your story, he's calling you to go, but maybe you want to stay. Maybe you don't have the faith to step out. And we're going to be talking about that together in that time. When we think about the decisions that we make and how they affect our story, how when we choose something and it changes our story. When I was in high school, senior in high school, I just moved back. Remember last week I shared a little bit of my story about how I had come to Christ and I moved back in with my family. The announcement went over the PA system in the school that they were looking for someone to serve as an assistant custodian after school each day, working for 2.5 hours after school each day, assisting the custodian. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. It's an easy job. I'm already here. I don't have a vehicle. I don't have a means of transportation, so I can work right after school. I can get a little bit of spending money. And so I went down to the office after school and I inquired. Nobody else had inquired about the job and was given the job. My job as the custodian's assistant was to, right after school was over, to walk around the entire campus and pick up all of the garbage. Now, in this public high school, throwing away your garbage into the garbage can was not a class that they offered. So for some reason, the students didn't know how to walk 5 feet to throw their garbage away. And the school had a restaurant right across the street from it. It was a burger joint. They had burgers and fries and pizza, everything else. And so a lot of the students who didn't want to eat in the cafeteria would walk across the street, I mean literally across the street, to the store. They would buy their hamburgers and their pizzas and their soft drinks and their French fries, and they'd walk back and they would sit on the lawn, they'd sit on the benches, and they would eat. And when they were done, they would just throw it down there. And then some days it was rainy. And that leftover hamburger bun got really messy. And so after school, when everybody else is standing around socializing, everybody else is interacting and laughing, and the school day is over, I'm out there picking up their garbage every day. Now, nobody mocked me. Nobody made fun of me for that. But I just kind of felt a little odd cleaning up after them in front of them. But I did it. I chose to do it. I believed God gave me that job. Very simple job. At the end of the school year, I needed a job in order to help pay for college. And what I did not realize is that every day when I went out there and picked up the garbage without failure, the school gardener saw me. And when the summer was coming, he needed an assistant, a full-time job, making way over minimum wage, almost twice minimum wage at the time. And that job was going to be a job that person would have their entire time through college every summer. And he saw me picking up the garbage every day faithfully, and he came to me and offered me the job. And it had a dramatic impact on my ability to work my way through college. Now, I had some people help me. Praise God for giving people who are committed to Christian education and were willing to sacrifice for me as well. But that job, that summer job, every year through college, because I made the simple decision to pick up somebody's slimy French fries and pickles. So a little decision had a life-altering course in my life. Today we're going to talk about some disciplines. And we're going to talk about that God might be calling you to start a discipline in your life so that it'll affect the story that you will later tell. In Daniel chapter 6, we have probably one of the most popular stories of the Bible. Daniel in the lion's den. It's a powerful story of faith, of determination, of integrity. It's got some action in it and conspiracy. It's an amazing story. In fact, if you're looking for something new to study in your worship, in your private devotions, the book of Daniel, and specifically this story, is an amazing story. I encourage you to consider doing that. But here in Daniel chapter 6, Daniel, by this time, the Babylonian kingdom has fallen. The Medo-Persian Empire has now risen up. And Daniel quickly grows into a place of power and authority within the Medo-Persian Empire, specifically in the area of Babylon. And the ruler has set forward, Darius has set up 120 satraps, governors, leaders in his kingdom that overrule the entire kingdom. And over those 120 leaders, he has set 3 other leaders, commissioners, over the top of those 120. And Daniel is chosen to be one of those 3. But it takes no time at all for Darius to recognize that Daniel is even above the other 2 of those 3. And so he is ready to position Daniel as the leader of this kingdom. Well, when all the others find out about it, when all the other leaders find out that Daniel is about ready to be promoted even higher and that they're being overlooked, they conspire together to find a way that they can overpower Daniel. So they do what everybody does in the political time, right? They do what everybody does when they're trying to bring down another leader, when they want to aspire to a particular political office. They get out, they send out investigators to dig up all the dirt of their opponent. And they put it on the radio, they put it on the television, they put it in the newspaper ads. They share all the dirt that they can find so that people will choose them over the person that's being considered. No different today, right? The problem was they could find no dirt. Daniel was a man of integrity. He never cheated on his taxes. He never lied. He never voted against his conscience. When Daniel said he was going to do something, he did something. His personal life, his private life, his public life, his relationship with the other leaders was a man of integrity. And though they sent investigators to try to find the dirt against Daniel, they could find nothing. Absolutely nothing against him. So they said, the only thing that we can do, the only way we can overpower Daniel, it's going to have to be in relationship to his God. Because he served a different God than they did. He was a Jew. He worshiped the God of heaven, the creator God. These others worshiped all different kinds of gods. So they conspired together and they came up with a plan. Let's go to Darius the king. Let's come up with this plan that for a month, for 30 days, everybody in the kingdom will worship Darius alone. No other God. For 30 days, they can bow down, pay homage, worship nobody else except him for 30 days. So all these leaders, all who are wanting to get rid of Daniel, conspired together and they presented this decree and said, listen, here's our plan. We want to have a festival, a celebration, a ceremony to acknowledge you as our great and wonderful leader. We have this idea that we're going to have a 30-day festival in which everybody in the kingdom will acknowledge you and worship you and pay homage to you and sacrifice and offerings to you, to no other God but to you. And in fact, it's so important that if anybody worships anybody else during that time, we'll throw them into the den of lions. And it seemed good to him, played against his ego, and he signed the decree, not realizing the implications of his decision. So what's Daniel going to do? What's he going to do? What does he do now? He could choose to worship somebody that is not a god, somebody that he respects and admires, but is not a god, or he could choose instead to honor his faith. And notice in Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. Now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered his house. Now, in his roof chamber, he had windows open toward Jerusalem, and he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God as he had done previously. You notice this? Daniel, what does he do? Does he give in? He doesn't give in. Why? Because Daniel is a man of integrity. Daniel's story If we were to write Daniel's story, it would be a man of integrity. Why was Daniel a man of integrity? Because you see what it says here in the last part of this verse. The last part of this verse. He continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God, as he had been doing previously. Daniel made the decision years before the decree was signed, before these governors and leaders decided to go against him. Daniel made the decision to begin a personal discipline in his life that would later affect his literal life. Years before Daniel made the decision, before it was an issue, before anybody knew about it, before he had any power, any position, before he had his first dream or the first interpretation for Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel made the decision that every day I'm going to, 3 times a day, stop what I'm doing and worship my God. In the morning when I get up, during my lunch break, before I go to bed, I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing, and I'm going to spend time worshiping my God. He did it with no fanfare, no attention. He made no public display about it, but it was a discipline, a choice, a decision that he made. I am going to do this. And everything we see happen in the book of Daniel, the visions that he was able to interpret, the dreams he was able to have, were as a result of his commitment to his God. If he had made the decision not to follow through with that discipline, we would have a different story for Daniel. Daniel was a man of integrity. These governors, these leaders could find nothing against Daniel because he was a man of integrity. Why was he a man of integrity? Because 3 times every day he stopped and retuned his heart and his faith to his God. 3 times every day. He didn't wait till Sabbath morning. He didn't wait till he got to a Sabbath school class or a small group. He did it by himself 3 times every day. He made that commitment. And that is why Daniel was the man of integrity that Daniel was. Now, of course, what's the result? The result was, as before, he went and he prayed. Now, his habit, his custom, his discipline was to pray to his God 3 times a day. And of course, the spies were there and they caught Daniel doing that. They brought him before the king because it was a law that was made. They threw him into the den of lions. And what was the result? That next morning, Daniel was still there. God honored Daniel's commitment. God honored Daniel's decision. It wasn't a decision that he just made. It was a lifetime decision that altered his story, that allowed God to be the author of his story. And the amazing story we have of Daniel in the lion den, a man spending the night with hungry lions. And there's no doubt that they were hungry, because when these bad guys were thrown in, they were devoured before they even hit the ground. God honored Daniel's commitment and did something powerful in his life to bring honor to God. Isn't that the story we would all love to have? Let me just take a few minutes and talk about maybe some disciplines that God might be calling us to consider in our life. Areas that God might be calling us to start a discipline. I'm going to break it down into 5 different areas. Please don't consider this exhaustive in any way, but maybe God is calling us to start a discipline in my spiritual life. Maybe like Daniel, I need to make the decision to begin taking time every day with God. That every day, whether it's once a day or 3 times a day, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever it is, maybe you recognize that in order for God to be the author of your story, you, like Daniel, need to stop and every day retune your faith, your heart, your life to God by spending time in prayer, by spending time in Bible study, by spending time in personal worship. Now, if you're looking to restart your personal devotions, I've provided a resource for you in our bulletin. And it's just a simple resource on the very back of this little insert. It says, talk it over. And there's some discussion questions and also some Bible verses that you can look up every day. If you don't have something, start here. It's related to the message of the day. And there's one verse for every week. Some are short, some are long. And take time saying, you know what? I'm going to spend time in God's Word and spend time praying. And these focus on starting disciplines in your life that will change your story. Now, if maybe for some, maybe you need to say, you know what? I've kind of gotten out of the habit. School started, or I started a new job, or life just changes us, and we need to redevelop those habits to restart that. For some, there might be some here today that have fallen out of the discipline of regular church attendance. Maybe you came today, but this isn't a normal thing for you. Maybe you just come every once in a while when you have time, when you're not busy, when you're not tired, or when you're not drugged here by somebody else. And maybe God is calling you to be part of the body of Christ, to become part of the household of faith, to become a part of a believing community to where you can be an encouragement and a blessing to other people in their life, or to be blessed yourself, to be encouraged in your own faith. And maybe it means being part of a Sabbath school class or a small group. Rather than just coming to church, sitting, singing, and hearing a message and leaving, to be plugged into a believing community by being an active part of a small group, like a Sabbath school class. Or maybe God is calling you to start a small group in your home this next year. To gather 5, 6, 10, 12 other people from the church, maybe even people from your neighborhood, one day a week into your home, to come together, to pray together, to encourage each other, to spend time in God's Word, and together as a group saying, God, what do you want to do in our hearts and in our life? Imagine what it's like for a group of 10 people to gather in a home and honestly search out the will of God. Do you think God would honor that? Absolutely would. Maybe God is calling you to do that. Maybe you're struggling in your spiritual life. Maybe you're not struggling, but God is calling you to take it to the next level. For some, maybe God is calling you to consider fasting. To just take something in your life and remove it for a week or even a month. Maybe you're just, you know what? No technology, no TV, no radio, no iPads, iPhones, Samsungs, no iPods, no video games, no Facebook, no internet for an entire week or an entire month. And all that time that I would invest in watching my favorite television show, all that time I would invest in finding out what's going on in someone's life, I'm going to spend that time in prayer. Or maybe fasting from a particular food item. Maybe some people I know say, I'm going to fast from sugar for an entire week. No sugar whatsoever. I know some women who fast from chocolate for an entire month. And whenever they have that compulsion, ooh, I need a piece of Hershey's chocolate, they use that time in prayer to God. Maybe God is calling you. I'll tell you, God is calling me to reclaim the fast in my own life. Next area is that of your mind. Maybe God is calling you to begin or start a discipline as it relates to your mind. Maybe God is calling you to start reading. That rather than just watching TV or listening to stuff or just hearing what other people tell you, to actually pick up a book and read a book. Maybe that there are some here today that are struggling with some issues, some personal issues, and they're mental struggles. Maybe there's an addiction that you have, whatever that addiction might be. And maybe you have been trying to get victory over that addiction, and it's time for you to start getting some people around you that can hold you accountable. by breaking the addiction by going public with it. I don't mean standing up in church. We don't want you to do that. But maybe gathering some people around you that can encourage you. You know, we have an incredible ministry here each Friday night, Celebrate Recovery, where a group of people come together, whatever their issues might be. They don't have to be hardcore addictions. It could be just, I'm just wanting to reclaim my own mind and my own heart, and coming together in a safe place where you can get help and encouragement. Maybe it's time to finally change your story by getting victory over that habit, over that addiction, by becoming part of a Celebrate Recovery group, or maybe getting some counseling. It's okay to get help. Listen, if my car breaks down, aside from a flat tire, I got to take it somewhere. I am not educated on how to fix my car. I can change my oil, although that's impractical nowadays. I can do basic things, but if there's something wrong with my transmission, I can't fix it. I have to go to somebody who is experienced and trained and knows how to do that. And I'm not apologetic for that. If I have problems with my electrical or my plumbing in my house, I can fix a couple little simple things, but I know when I cannot do something, and I do not feel apologetic by going to a professional to get help. Why would we feel that I'm less of a man if I go to get professional help for something wrong in my head? And I don't mean psychological. I mean, just I can't get victory over something. It's okay to get help. Maybe God is calling you to start something in your life. The third area is in my body. What kind of story do you want to tell? See, I always think of the story of one of our early founders in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a man by the name of James White. Powerful, amazing, gifted man. Began the publishing work in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Sent missionaries all over the world. He was like one of the most powerful, influential people in the advancement of the three angels' messages and the Seventh-day Adventist Church when we began. But his life ended short. And do you know why? Because he didn't take care of his body. He didn't take care of himself personally. Didn't take care of his health. And maybe some of us are thinking, maybe I need to begin a discipline. Maybe I need to start eating better. Maybe I need to start eating more fruits. Maybe I need to start eating more vegetables. Maybe I need to get up early and go to the gym. Maybe I need to buy a treadmill. Maybe I need to get somebody else and we go to the gym and work out together, or we go for walks together, or I decide I'm going to run a marathon 2 years from now. I'm going to start training today for that day then. Whatever it may be, you want your story to end well, and maybe God is calling you to start a discipline that helps you in your body. The fourth is in the area of finances. It's amazing as a pastor how many people have come to me and say, Pastor Tim, I'm just struggling financially. And unfortunately, it's a result of the path that they've chosen to be on. And so for some, in order to change your story, in order for God to be the author of your story, maybe you need to start a discipline, a biblical discipline that relates to finances, like putting together a budget, by being strategic in your finances, to sit down and say, how much am I bringing out, and give every dollar a purpose in your budget. Maybe for some it's saying, you know what, I am going to get out of debt. You cut up the credit cards, you throw them away, and you don't buy anything if you don't have money for it. And you get out of debt, you owe no man anything, and then you start planning and becoming a blessing to other people rather than being a slave to the lender. Maybe it's investing. Maybe it's realizing that later on in life you're going to need some source of income. So maybe putting a little bit aside every day, every week, every month, every year now will give you something later on to fall back on. Maybe God is calling you to start a discipline in that area. Maybe God is calling you to start a discipline in your relationships. Maybe in your marriage, relationships with your children, with your parents, your adult parents. God is calling you to start a discipline so that your relationships will be better. Let me just share with you real briefly last week the story of Andrea and I and how we met and how it was her grandmother that introduced us. So let me tell you a little bit more of that story. You see, I knew Andrea was moving into town because I had been going weekend after weekend to visit my friend who was living with Marie, Andrea's grandmother, and grandfather Earl. So I met them, I knew them, I had a relationship with Earl and Marie. I had spent some time with them because they were hosts of a friend of mine who was selling Christian literature in their home. So I got to know them and they got to know me. And one time Marie comes up to me and she says, our granddaughter is going to be moving to Andrews and you're in school there. I think you should meet her. We think that you guys would make a great couple. Well, warning alert, grandparents setting up their granddaughter. Be careful here. So I just, yeah, whatever, no problem, kind of scooted off to the side. And then every time I'd come to visit, we really think that you and our granddaughter would get along great. You should meet. She's going to be coming up here in about a month. She's going to be coming up in a few weeks. She's going to be coming up in a couple weeks. She's going to be coming up in a week. And every time they would say that, I'd say, no. One time, Marie comes over with a picture of Andrea in a bathing suit, in a bikini. This is our granddaughter. Okay, got my attention. And she said, now the only problem is she's engaged. Warning, alert. No, Marie, I am not going to meet her. I'm not interested. She's engaged. There's just kind of an integrity thing, not to mess with somebody else's girl. Not going to happen. Listen, the guy's an okay guy, but he's not a Christian. He's not an Adventist, and he's not making good decisions. She's making great decisions. She's coming back to God again, and we just think that you guys would be, no, Marie, absolutely not interested. So the next weekend, when I was supposed to go up and spend the weekend at Earl Marie's, and I needed a ride, and Marie said, Tim, I would be glad to drive down an hour and a half to pick you up and bring you up. I did not realize she was conspiring against me. So she said, I'm going to go visit my granddaughter and then I'm going to come pick you up. But when she came to pick me up, she said, I'm now going to visit my granddaughter. And I knew what was happening. And so when I got in the car and we got to her granddaughter's apartment, she handed me the fern and said, would you please carry the fern up to her house? I'm not going to tell Grandma she has to carry this fern up all these stairs by herself, but I knew exactly what she was doing. She took me all the way up there and knocked on the door, trying to force us to meet. So I made a decision that very day. At that very moment, as she's knocking on the door, I made the decision that I was not going to give Marie a word in edgewise. I was just going to dominate this conversation. She wanted us to talk anyway, but I was not going to give Marie a chance to say something that would embarrass her granddaughter and I. So when she introduced, I just jumped right into conversation and began asking questions. Where are you from? How long are you here? What program are you in? Do you have any friends? What's your schedule looking like? And just engaging in conversation until I said, well, yeah, I got to go. And then Marie said she needed to leave. And Marie was happy because we had talked. I was happy that we hadn't engaged in any conversation or, any embarrassing conversation. But when we ran into each other later on campus, it was actually at a pastor's house at a social event, I made the decision to ask Andrea if I could have a ride with her to her grandmother's so that I could spend time with my friend. So we spent an hour and a half drive up, Andrea telling her testimony, and an hour and a half drive coming back, me telling my testimony, and that's when God really began to work on our hearts. I'll share the rest of that story with you another time. But later on, when we just began dating, I realized that I came from a divorced family, and I knew that Andrea came from a divorced family. I knew I was going to be a pastor, which was going to have expectations and responsibilities on it that not just every normal family has. They kind of live in a glass bubble and they're on call 24/7, and I thought it would be fair for her to understand that. So I made several decisions, and we made several decisions, started several disciplines early on that have affected our story. The first thing was that I told her, listen, we're just starting to get to know each other. We're just starting dating. We're not getting too serious. But before we get too serious, I think it's important for you to consider the fact that if this relationship continues, you will eventually become a pastor's wife. Whoa, I hadn't thought about that. Well, we're here at Andrews University. There's pastors all over the place. Why don't you go talk to some of their spouses? And so she met with me a couple of days later and wanted to break up. No joke. She had talked to a couple pastors' wives that hated being pastors' wives. They hated it. So she didn't want anything to do with it. She was like, I like you, but I don't want that kind of life. These women are miserable. And their children are miserable, and I want nothing to do with that. So, well, wait, just wait. It's, do what you want, but let's talk to some other pastors and their wives. Maybe there's some things that we can learn. And we discovered that one of the huge differences between a pastoral family that's healthy and one that's not is for the pastor to set boundaries in his family and in his ministry. Because really, a pastor's work is never done. I used to say that a pastor's work is never done until the second coming, because there's always souls to save. But honestly, it's not even done there. We'll spend 1,000 years after that going over the records. The pastor's work is never done. There are always souls to be saved, always people to be prepared for the work. So it's never done, and it's easy to just invest your whole life. So I made a decision, a discipline in our relationship while we were dating, before we were even serious, that we would make time together. So we began a date night that we began before we were even seriously dating, when we were dating, when we were engaged, when we were married, and we have for the past 20 years of our relationship. Now the date night has changed and it's had some alterations, but we made the discipline to do that. Here's another discipline we made. Because we both came from separate families that were divorced families, we both knew that we were pre-programmed for a divorce. If we were going to follow the patterns of our families, if I was going to be like my father, my stepfather, if she was going to be like her mother, etc., if we were going to be like our relationships that we had seen, then our relationship was destined to be divorce. Every marriage begins, every couple that stands at the altar makes the commitment that we're going to be together till death do us part. But the reality is not everyone follows through with that commitment. What's the difference between those that do and those that don't? And I believe it's a number of disciplines in the relationship. The first is a commitment to God in the family. And so we began then, and we continue to this day, that we pray together as a couple and as a family every day. No matter what. It's kind of hard to hold a grudge against somebody you have to pray with. It's kind of hard to begin having an emotional and then eventually a physical relationship with somebody else when you know that you're praying with somebody about the strength and success of your marriage every single day. So we made that commitment to pray together every day. We also began counseling before we were married. We did premarital counseling. We read every single book we could on relationships. Every seminar we could go to, we would go to every seminar. And though we've been married for 20 years, we still regularly go to seminars and still regularly read books on relationships. Just not this last February, but the February before last, we went to a marriage retreat. And we're just finishing up. We haven't read it since we've moved, but we're reading a book on relationships. Again, another book. Because we're committed to that. And I can tell you, we have an amazing relationship. An amazing, God-honoring relationship. Andrea and I talked. She knew I was going to be sharing this today, and we talked about this throughout the week. Do you realize that a lot of people my age and younger do not value marriage in general, statistically speaking? Because they see very little success of it. And so I told her, I'm going to change some things in my preaching. We have an amazing relationship. And every couple who is single and considering to get married, I want to give you hope. You can too. If God is the author of your relationship. And you begin certain disciplines. So there may be couples that are here, maybe couples that are dating, couples that are engaged, couples that are just married. Maybe some of you have been married 20 years like us, maybe 40 or more years than us. But maybe your relationship is not where it needs to be. So maybe today God is calling you to begin a discipline. Maybe it's to begin family worship, to begin having worship every day. For us, we pray together every day, and we try to have worship every day. Sometimes I'm out late and can't do that, but we at least pray together every day. Usually at least twice a day as a family we pray together. Maybe God is calling you to do that, to pray together as a couple, to have worship as a couple, at least Friday night worship together as a family or as a couple, opening God's Word or opening a devotional book and doing that. And maybe God is calling you to start counseling today. We go to counseling every once in a while just for a checkup, right? You go in to get your teeth looked at, right, before it's in pain, right? You know that it's better to go in and see the dentist to look at your teeth before you need to, so that you can catch things before they become a problem. We do checkups by going to marriage retreats, and sometimes we go to counseling just to say, we feel like things are great, but we want to make sure there's nothing catching us off guard. So maybe God's calling you for counseling. Maybe God is calling you as a single young adult to find another married couple who has an amazing, out-of-the-park, home run relationship and start spending time with them so that you can learn the key successes of a strong marriage so that when you begin dating, you can start the relationship with God as the author of your story. I don't know what God is calling you to start in your life. My hope is that you take time today and throughout this week to pray, Lord, is there something that I need to start in my life? Here, I'm telling you what mine is. I used to fast on a regular basis, and I just fell out of the habit of it. And God has called me, He's put on my heart to reclaim the fast in my life. For a period of time, to fast from something. It'll be different things. Sometimes it'll be areas of food. Sometimes it'll be areas of technology or other issues. And when I fast from that, all that time that I would invest in that activity, or whenever I think about something that I might miss, I'm going to concentrate on prayer. Sometimes just realigning my own heart with God, better understanding the vision that He has for us in Beltsville, in the D.C. area. And sometimes it's just to make sure, Lord, you and I are exactly where we need to be. That's what God has called me to start. Is the fast, to reclaim that in my life again. What is God calling you to start? What area might He be? I encourage you to pray for one thing. Focus on that one thing. What is God calling you to start? So that later on, like Daniel, when your relationships are in trouble, your finances are in trouble, you go through an issue in your body physically, your mind or your spiritual faith is challenged, will you be the man, the woman of integrity because you began that discipline before and that God is the author of your story? What's God calling you to? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for loving us, for investing in us, for caring about us, for desiring to be the author of our story. So some here today, Lord, may need to recommit their hearts to you. Maybe they have chosen to be the author of their stories. And maybe today they need to begin their story by surrendering themselves to you, fully giving themselves over to you as Lord, Master, and Savior of their heart. Some here today, Lord, you are calling to start something new, to start a discipline that will alter their story. Lord, there are relationships that need to be reclaimed, healed, or even strengthened. And I pray that you will put upon their heart the discipline to accomplish that. Thank you. In the name of your Son, Jesus, amen.